Mesopotamia means land between rivers. The Sumerians built city-states, canals, mud brick houses, temples called Ziggurats, and developed crafts, trade, carts, and sailboats.
Section 11. Bronze Age Civilizations outside India. 3 other Bronze Age civilizations. Now we widen our view from India to the whole world. Around the same time as the Harappans, 3 other great Bronze Age civilizations flourished: the Mesopotamian, the Egyptian, and the Chinese. So the Harappans were not alone. They were part of a family of early civilizations rising across the globe. Four River Valley Civilizations. Here is a pattern I want you to notice and never forget. All 4 of these early civilizations grew up in fertile river valleys: the Harappan along the Sindhu and Sarasvati, the Mesopotamian between the Euphrates and Tigris, the Egyptian along the Nile, and the Chinese in the Huang-He, Yellow River basin. Rivers, rivers, rivers. Remember this common thread. Mesopotamia, Harappa contact. Now, geographically, Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley were quite close to each other, and this closeness allowed strong contact and trade between the Mesopotamian and Harappan civilizations. So these 2 ancient peoples were not isolated. They knew each other and exchanged goods. Egypt and China. Little direct contact. On the other hand, the Egyptian and Chinese civilizations show little tangible evidence of direct contact with the Harappans. Why? Mainly because they were far away. So distance decided who traded with whom. Near neighbors interacted, distant ones did not. Think about it. Why rivers? The textbook now asks a thoughtful question. Why were rivers so important for the growth of early civilizations? Discuss it. Think about how rivers gave water to drink and to irrigate crops, fertile soil from their floods, fish to eat, and easy transport by boat. So rivers were truly the lifelines of early civilization. No wonder every one of them grew beside a river. Mesopotamian Civilization. Portions 114 through 131. 114. Earliest city-based civilization. Although all 4 civilizations existed around the same time, the earliest city-based civilization appeared in Mesopotamia. In other words, city life began here first. So Mesopotamia holds a special title: the birthplace of the world's first cities. Meaning of Mesopotamia. The word Mesopotamia is Greek for the land in between, or land between the rivers. And which rivers? The Euphrates and the Tigris in West Asia. In today's map, this region covers mainly Iraq and Kuwait, with parts of Turkey and southwestern Iran. So the very name tells you exactly where it is, nestled between 2 great rivers. The Fertile Crescent. The crescent-shaped foothills stretching from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf, around the Zagros and Taurus mountains, are called the Fertile Crescent. Why fertile? Because of their high agricultural potential, very good land for farming. So this rich, curved band of land was the perfect cradle for early farming and cities. Farming and copper arrive. Farming began in this region very early, about 12,000 years before the present. Then copper tools arrived around 4,500 BCE, and copper made a big difference. It improved agriculture, crafts, and trade. This in turn helped spread farming across the vast plains of the Euphrates and Tigris. So once again, better tools led to a stronger, more productive society. cities become city-states. Over the next 2,000 years, some large cities grew so powerful that they became city-states. Let me define this important term. A city-state is a sovereign, independent state centered on a single city that also rules the surrounding territory. So imagine a city that is a country all by itself. That is a city-state. Four Mesopotamian civilizations. From about 3,500 BCE onwards, four major city-based civilizations flourished in Mesopotamia, one after another: the Sumerian, the Akkadian, the Assyrian, and the Babylonian. Remember these four names in order. They are the great chapters of Mesopotamian history, and we will meet each one. The Sumerians. First come the Sumerians, based at Ur and other cities in Sumer, present-day southern Iraq. They were the earliest to become a city-based civilization, and they achieved remarkable firsts. They were the first to build dams and canals for irrigation, and the first to use mud bricks and burnt bricks to construct houses, defensive walls, and other structures. So the Sumerians were true pioneers of engineering. Ziggurat defined. Here is a key word: the ziggurat. A ziggurat was a tower-like, stepped, pyramid-shaped temple with several floors, and the main temple sat right on top. Its top was a holy place, and around it stood palaces, royal storehouses, and even the city's treasury. The surrounding walls had only one entrance, so it could be guarded like a strong room. So the ziggurat was temple, treasury, and fortress all in one. Sumerian religion. The Sumerians worshipped many gods, and they built a temple for each one. They believed these gods had power over natural forces like floods and winds. So to please and calm these powerful gods, the Sumerians honored them with grand temples. Religion was at the very heart of their lives. Temple economy and hierarchy. Each city actually grew around its main temple, the ziggurat. And here is the striking part. All economic activity, such as agriculture, trade, and the movement of goods, was tied to the temple authority. Entry into the sacred temple was restricted to high priests and priestesses, who were probably part of the ruling class. So the temple reveals a clear social hierarchy. Some people were far more powerful than others. Sumerian cities and crafts. In these cities, kings lived in grand palaces, while ordinary people lived in small brick houses. Most people's lives centered on farming, but many also practiced crafts like metalworking, pottery, and textiles, and there were also merchants and traders. So a Sumerian city buzzed with many kinds of work, a truly complex society. Don't miss out: Harappan water skills. Here is a lovely comparison. While the Sumerians were building canals, our own early Harappans were building check dams called gabberbans across small streams to improve irrigation. And this water management skill grew even more advanced later, seen in the amazing water tanks at Dolavira and the great burnt brick dockyard at Lothal. So the Harappans were every bit as skilled as the Sumerians in managing water.
Harappians were skilled farmers and engineers. Kalibath shows plowed fields, while Dolaviti and Londa reveal advanced water harvesting, storage, drainage, and dockyard construction.
The beginning of writing, Cuneiform. Now to a huge Sumerian achievement, writing. The Sumerians were the first to start writing around 3300 BCE, and their writing system is called cuneiform. The name comes from the wedge-shaped tool used to make the marks. So the Sumerians gave the world one of its very first scripts. Cuneiform defined. Let us define it clearly. Cuneiform is one of the earliest writing systems developed by the Sumerians. It was written by pressing a wedge-shaped stylus into soft clay tablets. In fact, the word comes from the Latin cuneus, meaning wedge, referring to those wedge-shaped marks. So picture a scribe pressing little wedge shapes into wet clay, and you have understood cuneiform. Cuneiform spreads. By about 3000 BCE, cuneiform was used all over Mesopotamia by many different city-states, even though these peoples spoke different languages. And the scribes who could write it enjoyed a high status in society. So cuneiform became a shared writing system, much like a common script uniting people of different tongues. What tablets tell us? These cuneiform tablets are precious to us because they give a glimpse into Mesopotamian life and beliefs. They're great myths and epics, hymns, law codes, and educational writings. They were also used to keep records of farming and crafts, such as the work of potters, seal cutters, shipbuilders, and carpenters. So the tablets are like an ancient diary and account book rolled into one. Don't miss out. Sumerian inventions. Here are some brilliant Sumerian inventions to remember. They invented the wheeled cart and the sailboat. They used calculations to construct buildings and measure fields. And most fascinating of all, their number system was based on 60, which is exactly why we still have the 60-minute hour, the 60-second minute, and the 360-degree circle today. So every time you look at a clock, you are using a Sumerian idea. Let us recall. Decipherment matters. Now, recall an earlier point. Cuneiform has been deciphered, but our Harappan script has not. So the textbook asks you to reflect. Does our understanding of a civilization change when its script is decoded compared to when it is not? Absolutely. Once we can read a people's own words, we learn their names, laws, and thoughts, and history comes alive. This is why the undeciphered Harappan script is such a great loss. Section 13. Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. The Akkadians rise. Next, in 2334 BCE, a new power arose, the Akkadians, centered on the city of Akkad, which lay further north in Sumer, in central Mesopotamia. They overshadowed the Sumerians. So power in Mesopotamia now passed from the Sumerians to the Akkadians, the wheel of history turning once more. Akkadian language, same script. The Akkadians spoke Akkadian, a different language from Sumerian. But here is the interesting part. Both peoples used the same cuneiform script for writing. So even when the spoken language changed, the writing system stayed the same. This shows how useful and adaptable cuneiform was. First Dynastic Empire. Akkadian records document something historic, the world's first dynastic empire, where power passed down through a ruling family. This was also a period that saw the evolution of creative literature. So the Akkadians gave us both the first true empire and some of the earliest imaginative writing. Sargon and trade. One of the most important Akkadian kings was Sargon, and his cuneiform tablets mention trade with three eastern lands, Dilmun, Magan, and Meluhha. So even 4,000 years ago, kings kept careful records of their far-flung trade. This is exactly the kind of written evidence that makes the historical period so rich. Meluhha equals the Harappans. And here is a fact that should make you sit up. Meluhha is generally identified with our own Sindhu-Sarasvati civilization. Meanwhile, Dilmun is today's Bahrain and Magan is today's Oman. With the Harappans, the Mesopotamians traded semi-precious stone beads, ivory, timber, gold dust, and probably copper. So Mesopotamian records actually mention the Harappans, proof of contact between the two great civilizations. The Assyrians. Around 2154 BCE, the Akkadian Empire lost its supremacy to a new city-state, Ashur, in northern Mesopotamia, giving rise to the Assyrians. In a short time, Assyrian dominance spread across Mesopotamia and into neighboring regions, lasting until about 1700 BCE. So the Assyrians were the next great power in this ever-changing land. The Babylonians. Then, from about 1900 BCE onwards, a new city-state, Babylonia, rose to dominance in central Mesopotamia, the Babylonians. So once again, power shifted, this time to Babylon, one of the most famous cities of the ancient world. Hammurabi and his code. Babylonia's glory truly began with the great king Hammurabi from about 1792 BCE, who conquered neighbors and expanded a small city-state into a large empire. His most significant contribution was the famous Code of Hammurabi, a written collection of rules for civil and social conduct. It was so influential that it became a model for many future legal systems. So Hammurabi is remembered as one of the great lawgivers of history. Hittites defined. Let us note another people, the Hittites. They were Indo-European people who built a powerful empire in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, around the 2nd millennium BCE. They will matter in the very next portion because they helped bring down the Babylonians. Fall of the Babylonians. By about 1400 BCE, the Babylonians lost their earlier glory. Why? Because of repeated attacks by the Hittites and other rising powers who had mastered new technologies, along with environmental damage, pressure on farmland, and internal political and economic problems. All these troubles together weakened Babylonian control, and new powers rose in West Asia. So notice how many different causes combined to bring down an empire. That is how history usually works.
The Sindhu-Sarasvati civilization developed from earlier farming and craft communities. Over time, settlements became planned urban centers with pottery, seals, weights, trade, and specialized crafts.
Class 9 and 10 students, don't worry, make science and social science easy with your CBSE teacher. Subscribe now, like, comment, and press the bell.
Mehrgarh was one of the earliest farming villages in the Indian subcontinent. People grew wheat and barley, raised animals, built brick houses, and made beautiful ornaments.